Good evening and welcome. This is your special space to slow down. It's a place to let your mind float and to softly dream through the quiet corners of our world. Tonight, our thoughts are sailing to the world of islands, those amazing places that look like bright jewels scattered on the big blue sea. They are far away, but also joined to everything. They seem small, but their stories are endless. Islands are like tiny worlds inside our big world, and each one holds its own story of being born, of growing, and of changing. Before we start our trip, I would love to know where you are listening from tonight. It always makes me happy to see all the different places this little corner of calm can reach. If you feel these quiet trips help you rest, giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel is a wonderful way to help us build this place together. For those who are already part of our group, thank you so much. You are a special part of this adventure. And don't you worry, I will try not to make things so interesting that they keep you from sleeping. But if that does happen, at least your dreams might be full of new and amazing things. So let's step quietly onto the beach of our story. What makes islands feel so magical in our minds? Why do they seem so special, both on a map and in our hearts? When you think about islands, you think about where the water meets the ground. You think about being separate, but also being connected. These are pieces of the earth that broke off a long time ago, or maybe they pushed up from under the sea. They are places where being all alone shapes every tree, every animal, and every person who lives there. Islands remind us how strong life is. They can be hard volcanic rock that turns into a green jungle. They can be reefs built slowly by tiny coral. They can be homes for people, thriving right on the edge of a giant ocean. They're also the setting for some of our oldest stories. Sailors staring at the line where the sky meets the water, dreamed of magic lands hiding in the mist. Writers and thinkers have used islands as pictures for being alone, for finding new things, and for surviving. And in science, islands have been like school classrooms for learning about life, helping us understand where everything came from. This journey will be a slow, sleepy drift across these scattered worlds. We'll stop to look at how they were born in fire, their soft beauty, their tangled pasts, and the quiet lessons they teach us. By the end, you might see that islands are not just spots of land with the water all around them. They are like mirrors, showing us how creative nature is and how big our imaginations can be. So, as you listen, let your thoughts wash in and out like the tide. And think about this. If every island is its own little world, what hidden worlds might still be waiting out there, just past where we can see? Imagine standing at the edge of an island. Black rock touches the ocean, and steam hisses when waves hit the hot, new lava. The air smells sharp, like new rocks, and under your feet is land that just popped up from deep inside the earth. Volcanic islands are one of the most exciting ways our planet makes new land. They are born from fire and noise, but they often turn into peaceful, beautiful places. It shows us that making something new and breaking something old can be like two sides of the same shiny coin. The story of these islands starts deep under the ocean floor, in the restless, glowing middle of the earth. Our planet's outside skin isn't one solid piece. It's like a giant puzzle, made of huge pieces we call tectonic plates. These giant slabs float very, very slowly, carried on rivers of melted rock deep inside. When they bump into each other, pull apart, or slide past one another, giant forces are let loose. Volcanic islands are one of the most amazing things that happen because of this hidden dance. There are different ways these islands can be born. Sometimes, one puzzle piece slides under another. Melted rock, called magma, can rise up and burst through the top as a fiery volcano. The islands of Japan were made this way. In other places, the puzzle pieces pull apart. Melted rock bubbles up to fill the space, making a chain of islands, like Iceland. And then there are the hot spots. These are curious places where a stream of extra hot rock from deep in the earth punches through a puzzle piece, like a torch. This makes a volcano that can grow tall enough to stick out of the water. The Hawaiian Islands are the most famous example of this. Each island was made as the giant plate slowly moved over this one fountain of fire, like a piece of paper sliding over a candle. It's amazing to think that whole lands can be built this way. A single eruption can make new land in just one night. And over hundreds of years, the lava builds mountains, valleys, and coastlines. At first, the new land is empty. It's just a dark, hard blanket of cooled lava with sharp edges and no sign of life. But nature is very patient. Seeds carried by birds or floating on the ocean find little cracks to hide in. Rain and wind slowly break the rock down into soil. Soon little green sprouts pop up. Then come forests, bugs, and birds. Over a long, long time, a busy, living world grows on top of what used to be dead stone. Hawaii is one of a perfect picture of this change. The island started as piles of dark lava, built layer by layer. Today, they are covered in thick rainforests, have tall mountains with snow on top, and are circled by colorful reefs. Kilauea, one of the busiest volcanoes on Earth, has erupted many times, sometimes covering homes and roads. But it also adds new land to the island. It's strange that a force that can destroy things can also be the builder of a paradise. Volcanic islands come in many shapes. Some are huge, tall giants like Hawaii's Mauna Kea. It rises more than 33,000 feet from the bottom of the ocean, making it the tallest mountain on Earth if you measure from the seafloor. Other islands are just tiny bits of jagged rock sticking out of the waves. They are the last leftovers of old volcanoes, worn down by wind and water. In some places, whole chains of islands form. The older ones get worn down and sink, while new ones rise up like a moving picture of land being made and unmade across the ocean. Life on these islands has always been tied to the fire underneath. The first people who lived on volcanic islands thought the ground itself was alive, spooky, and powerful. Many people honored volcanoes as holy places. They thought the eruptions were messages from gods or spirits. The Polynesians who first came to Hawaii told stories of Pele, the goddess of fire, who shaped the land with her fiery temper. You can find stories like this from Mount Fuji in Japan to the volcanoes of Indonesia. For scientists, volcanic islands hold another kind of magic. They are like outdoor labs where you can watch how the earth and living things work. Charles Darwin, when he was sailing on his ship, the Beagle, studied the Galapagos Islands. They were also made by volcanoes. He was amazed at how each island, being different, had its own special kinds of plants and animals. Being so alone helped him come up with his big idea about how life changes over time, which we call evolution. Without these fiery islands, we might not understand life the same way we do today. There's also something about them that makes you feel small. A volcanic island is always changing. Cliffs fall down, waves chew away at the land, and over thousands of years, the island might sink back under the sea. New islands are sometimes born very fast, like Surtsey, an island that burst out of the sea near Iceland in the 1960s. Scientists got to watch a brand new piece of land get its first visitors. Moss, lichen, and seabirds came first. Then more plants and animals arrived. The island became a real-life experiment showing how life takes hold. Even though they are beautiful, volcanic islands can be dangerous. Their hills can slide down, and big waves called tsunamis can crash onto their shores. Whole towns have been changed or destroyed by eruptions. When the volcano Krakatoa exploded in 1883, it blew up most of its island and sent a shock wave around the whole world. The sound was supposedly heard thousands of miles away. But even after all that, new life grew back. And today, Anak Krakatau, which means the child of Krakatoa, is a new island rising up in the same spot. It's proof that the Earth is always in a cycle of ending and beginning again. What makes volcanic islands so wonderful is that they are two things at once. They are places of violence and peace, of new life and destruction. 1 minute, a mountain is throwing fire into the sky. The next, it's a quiet home for beaches, forests, and people. This push and pull feels a lot like life itself. Gentle, wild, but always finding a way to keep going. As you dream of these islands, rising like green gems from the blue water, think about the fire burning deep below them, every grain of sand on a volcanic beach, every tall mountain, every green valley full of bird songs. It is all a gift from the fire, and maybe that's why we love these places so much. They remind us that even in the middle of destruction, there is always the chance for a new beginning. Far out in the wide, open ocean, you can find some of the most gentle-looking but strongest homes on Earth. At first, they look like they could just wash away. They look like rings of sand or tiny moons of land with bright blue water glowing in the middle. But under the waves, a secret is hidden. The bottoms of these islands are coral reefs and atolls. These are giant castles in the sea, built not by people, but by tiny living things smaller than your fingernail, whose hard work over thousands of years creates huge underwater cities. People sometimes think coral is a rock or a plant, but it's really an animal, or rather, it's a big family or colony of millions of tiny creatures called polyps. Each little polyp is a soft-bodied animal that builds a hard, stony skeleton around itself for protection, like a little bricklayer building a stone house. When millions of them live together, they grow into the shapes that look like branches, brains, or antlers, which we call a coral reef. Inside their bodies, corals keep tiny, microscopic algae. These algae use sunlight to make food, just like plants do. This team-up is one of nature's quiet miracles. The algae get a safe place to live, and the corals get food, which helps them grow. Without this partnership, the reefs wouldn't be there. Over a very, very long time, corals slowly build on top of each other. The old skeletons become the floor, and the new corals grow up toward the sun. After a while, whole underwater lands are made. They can stretch for hundreds of miles, making busy homes for so many creatures that people sometimes call them the rainforests of the sea. A man named Charles Darwin was one of the first to solve the mystery of how some reefs get their ring shape. While sailing in the Pacific Ocean long ago, he saw these ring-shaped reefs called atolls. They were circles of coral with a pool of water in the middle, called a lagoon, and often just a thin strip of sandy land on top. How did they get like that? Darwin had a simple, smart idea. He guessed that a volcanic island with a reef around its edge slowly sank back into the sea over a very, very long time. As the mountains sank down, the coral kept growing up and up, always reaching for the sunlight. After a long time, the mountain was gone, hiding under the water. Only the ring of coral was left behind. The calm lagoon in the middle is right where the island used to be. Today's scientists have checked, and they know that Darwin's wonderful idea was right. To picture an atoll is to imagine a dream. It's a ring of coral and sand around a calm, shallow pool of water, cut off from the big, restless ocean. Palm trees lean in the wind, seabirds fly overhead, and under the water is a world of amazing colors. Thousands of kinds of fish swim through the coral, flashing like living jewels. Sea turtles float slowly by, while eels hide in cracks and sharks swim along the outside reef. Every little crack is a home for something. From tiny shrimp and crabs to big schools of fish, these living cities are huge. The Great Barrier Reef in Australia is so big it can be seen from outer space. It's made of thousands of reefs, and it's the largest living thing on Earth. But even small reefs are amazing. A tiny patch of healthy reef might have more kinds of animals than a patch of rainforest floor. This is why reefs are often called the beating hearts of the ocean. For people, reefs and atolls have long been a safe place and a source of food. Many island towns get most of their food from the reef fish, and the reefs act like natural walls, stopping big waves and protecting the land from washing away. Long ago, sailors used reefs as signs, knowing that a change in the water's color, from dark blue to bright blue, meant shallow water and maybe land. Today, reefs are places of wonder where people come to snorkel and dive in their colorful maze. But the beauty of reefs is also their weakness. They need things to be just right. The right water temperature, the right amount of light, and clean water. When the ocean gets too warm, the corals get stressed and spit out their algae friends. This is called bleaching. Without the algae, the corals turn white, like ghosts, and they lose their main food. If it stays warm for too long, they die, leaving behind a stony graveyard. Warm seas, pollution, and other changes from humans are big dangers to reefs. But reefs can also heal. If the water gets clean and cool again, they can get their algae back and start to grow. Some people are even working to plant new coral, like planting a garden underwater, to help them come back. It's slow work, but it gives hope that these sea castles can keep living. Atolls themselves are lovely, but life there can be hard. The land is very thin and low, so it's easily flooded by storms or rising seas. Fresh water is hard to find. People have to collect rain. Life on an atoll means you have to be smart and careful. The coconut palm, sometimes called the tree of life, gives food, drink, and wood for houses. Fish from the lagoon give protein. These thin rings of land may look like paradise, but living there has always been a careful balancing act. There is also something special about what reefs and atolls mean. They show us that huge, wonderful things can be built by tiny, small efforts. Millions of little polyps, each no bigger than a grain of rice, work together to build palaces that last for thousands of years. They remind us that life grows best when things work together. The coral and the algae, the fish and the reef, the people and the sea. The next time you dream of a tropical island, don't just picture the sandy beach. Picture the living city under the waves. Every flash of color, every little fish is part of a story millions of years in the making. Coral reefs and atolls are nature's masterpieces. They are gentle castles that feed the ocean, and they show us the quiet strength of small lives working together. But the story of islands isn't just about fire and tiny animals. It's also about ice. When you think of an island, you might picture warm beaches. But many of the world's most amazing islands were carved by glaciers. These are like slow-moving rivers of solid ice. They scraped across the land, cut through rock, and left behind pieces of land as reminders of their great power. During the great ice ages, long, long ago, big parts of our world were covered in ice sheets, some more than a mile deep. These giant ice blankets were not still. They slid forward, grinding the land under them like giant sandpaper. As they moved, they plucked huge rocks from the ground and dragged them along, scraping deep cuts into the earth. When the world got warmer and the ice melted, the sea level rose up. The ocean water flooded into those deep cuts, turning them into the coastlines and island chains we see today. One of the most beautiful things this ice made is called a fjord. A fjord is a long, skinny path of water with very steep cliffs on both sides. It was made when a glacier cut a deep valley below sea level, which the ocean filled up later. Norway is famous for its fjords, which look like watery fingers stretching into the land with mountains rising straight up from the sea. You can still see the scrape marks from the ice. You can find fjords in New Zealand, Chile, and Canada, too. Each one tells a story of ice meeting stone. Glaciers also left behind archipelagos, big groups of islands scattered in the sea. Look at the coast of Sweden and Finland. There are tens of thousands of islands there. Many are smooth, round rocks that were left behind when the ice melted away. These rocky spots, some just big enough for one tree, make the sea look like it's sprinkled with land. The British Isles, the islands of Great Britain and Ireland, got their shape from the end of the last ice age. For a long, long time, Britain wasn't an island at all. It was connected to the rest of Europe, a big grassy plain called Doggerland, once stretched across what is now the sea. People and animals lived there. But as the ice melted, the sea rose higher and higher. That land was slowly covered by water, leaving the water channel that now separates England from France. The islands we know today were made when the rising water cut them off. In other places, the melting ice made coastlines that look like puzzles. In Canada, the melting ice made the Arctic Islands, a giant web of islands stretching toward the North Pole. Baffin Island is one of them, and it's huge. But countless smaller islands float nearby like broken pieces of ice. This is a land of cold, where you can still see the work of ice in the glaciers that hold on to the tall mountains. Greenland is the world's biggest island, and it is still covered in ice. Almost all of it is hidden under a giant ice sheet. But on the coast, you can see where glaciers have carved deep fjords, leaving only thin strips of land where people can live. Traveling along Greenland's shore is like visiting a museum of ice. What makes these ice-carved islands so interesting is how they are both harsh and beautiful. There is something spooky about a land scraped clean by ice, where the rock shines and deep lakes fill the hollows. But these places are also full of life. The cold water in fjords is full of food for fish, seabirds, and whales. The mix of tall cliffs, dark water, and busy animals is both wild and full of life. These islands are also important to people. In Norway, the fjords shaped where people built their homes. They lived on the thin strips of land between the mountains and the sea, and learned to fish and sail in the calm waters. In Scotland, the islands carved by ice became a safe place for Gaelic culture, where stories and language were kept alive. It's easy to forget that this all happened pretty recently, in Earth's time. The last ice age ended only about 12,000 years ago. The coastlines that look so old to us were actually flooded and changed not that long ago. If you stood on the shore of northern Europe before then, you would have seen a grassy field, not an open sea. It's also neat to think about the difference between islands made of fire and islands made of ice. Volcanic islands pop up in a sudden, fiery burst. Glacial islands are found when the ice slowly melts away. One is made by a loud explosion. The other is found in a quiet retreat. But both make new worlds, set apart by water, ready for life. Today, as glaciers in places like Greenland keep melting, new islands are still being found. When the heavy ice lifts off the land itself slowly springs back up. Places that were pushed down are rising again, making new islands and changing old coasts. It's a reminder that the Earth is never still, and the story of ice and water is still being written. So the next time you see a map with chains of islands, picture the work of the ice. Imagine the giant white blankets that covered the land, grinding and carving. Then imagine them melting and the seas rising to fill the valleys. These islands are like the fingerprints of glaciers, scattered across the ocean, quiet reminders of the slow, giant power of ice. When you step onto an island, it often feels like stepping into a different world. Animals and plants might look a little familiar, but they are often strangely different from anywhere else. This is the puzzle of being all alone. When living things are cut off by the ocean, they start to follow their own strange rules. This leads to wonderful, and sometimes weird, new creatures. One of the main results is something scientists call endemism. That's a science word for creatures that are found nowhere else on Earth. Islands are full of these special creatures. Once a group of animals or plants gets to an island, maybe blown by the wind, washed up on a log, or carried by a bird, they are stranded, like being shipwrecked. Over many, many years, they change to fit their new home. They slowly become different from their cousins on the mainland, until they become something brand new. Think about the Galapagos Islands, which Charles Darwin visited long ago. He found birds called finches there. On each island, the finches had different shapes for their beaks, depending on what food there was. Some beaks were strong for crushing seeds. Others were thin for reaching into flowers or catching bugs. They all came from the same bird family, but being alone on different islands changed them into specialists for different jobs. Darwin's discovery there helped him come up with his big idea about how life changes. Sometimes the changes are even stranger. Look at the Komodo dragon, the biggest lizard in the world. It lives on just a few islands in Indonesia. These giants can grow as long as a small car and weigh as much as a small deer. They grew so big because they were alone, with no big hunting cats or wolves to bother them. They took the job that a tiger might have somewhere else. The Komodo dragon shows us that islands sometimes shuffle the deck and deal a strange new card. Then there are the giant tortoises, like those in the Galapagos and Seychelles. On the mainland, tortoises don't get that big. But on their safe islands, with no hunters and plenty of plants to eat, they grew huge and old, some living for more than 100 years. Their shells look like living rocks. They make you wonder, why here and not somewhere else? The answer is in the special, separate life on an island. Being alone can also make creatures get smaller. This is called dwarfism. Old bones show that tiny elephants, some no taller than a big dog, once lived on islands in the Mediterranean Sea. With less food to eat, smaller bodies were better for staying alive. Likewise, on the same islands as the Komodo dragon, scientists found the bones of a tiny, ancient kind of human. They nicknamed them hobbits. Standing only about 3 feet tall, these people may have grown small to survive on an island with not a lot of food. These patterns are so clear that scientists call islands natural laboratories. They have clear borders, the water, simple sets of creatures, and not too many things going on at once. Islands let scientists study how animals and plants change and survive. It's like watching the big story of life in a small, easy-to-read book. Plants also do strange things when they're alone. In New Zealand, which broke off from a giant, ancient land, life went down a different path. Birds took the jobs that mammals like mice or deer do elsewhere. The plants grew strange defenses like stiff, spiky leaves to stop giant, extinct birds called moas from eating them. Without mammals around, the plants grew in totally different ways. Islands are also homes for flightless birds. With no hunters to fly away from, wings become extra work. Over many years, birds just stop flying. The dodos of Mauritius is the most famous example. These big, clumsy birds were perfectly happy on their island until humans came, bringing hungry animals with them. Other flightless birds still live, like the kiwi in New Zealand, or the kakapo, a parrot that likes to walk. Each one tells a story of changing in a safe, lonely place. What's so neat about island life is that you can never guess what will happen. On one island, a lizard gets huge. On another, an elephant gets tiny. A bird might stop flying, or a plant might grow spikes. The rules of life bend and twist, but always for a good reason: to survive in that one special place. When people first found these islands, they must have felt like they had landed in a dream world. Even today, scientists who visit lonely islands still find new kinds of animals: tiny snails, new bugs, or even lizards that no one had ever seen before. The fact that we are still finding new life, hidden on islands, is a wonderful reminder of how rich our planet is. But being special is also a danger. The same loneliness that lets these creatures become unique also makes them weak, because they never had to deal with hunters. Many island animals don't know how to hide. When humans brought cats, rats, and goats, it was a disaster. Birds that never learned to be afraid were wiped out. Plants were eaten to the ground. The dodo is just the most famous one. Countless other creatures vanished forever. Even with these sad stories, islands still capture our hearts. They show us how creative nature can be. They show us that life is not a straight line, but a twisting, branching tree that tries new ideas everywhere it can. Each island is like a separate test, and the results are as different as giant lizards and tiny elephants. In the end, the puzzle of being alone teaches us something deep about life. When cut off, life has to get creative. Sometimes the results are beautiful, sometimes they're weird, and sometimes they're sad. But they always remind us that amazing new things can come not just from having a lot, but also from having just a little. An island may be small, but the stories it can tell are as big as the sea. There is just something about islands that pulls at our imagination. A mountain is tall and a desert is wide, but an island holds a mystery. Because it's surrounded by water and cut off, it makes you ask questions. What's over there? Who lives on it? What secrets are hidden on its beaches? For thousands of years, people have told stories about magical islands. Some were real, some were pretend, and many were somewhere in between. Maybe the most famous story is of Atlantis. A wise Greek man named Plato told a story about a powerful island city that grew too proud. It vanished under the sea in a single, terrible day and night. For Plato, it was a story with a lesson about being too greedy. But over the years, the story grew. People have looked for the lost island everywhere. No one has ever found it, but we still love the idea of a great lost land swallowed by the ocean. Another famous mystery island was Avalon, from the stories of King Arthur. Avalon was meant to be a magical land of healing, where no one grew old. It was the place where King Arthur was taken to rest after his last battle, hidden in the mist until he was needed again. The picture of a misty island where heroes sleep and magic is real captured the hearts of people for ages. We love the promise that somewhere out of sight, there is a place that time cannot touch. This kind of story is told all over the world. The Irish told stories of Tir na Nog, the land of eternal youth, a faraway island you could only reach by a long sea journey. In Japan, stories told of an island where people lived forever. Polynesian sailors told stories of Hawaii, the hidden island their families came from, and where their spirits would go back to. People everywhere dreamed of perfect or dangerous islands just past the edge of the map, putting their hopes and fears out onto the water. Part of this magic comes from being far away. An island is a place all by itself. It has clear edges. It feels like a tiny world you can hold in your mind. Because it's so separate, it's easy to imagine that anything could be there. Strange animals, lost cities, or magic trees. Before maps were very good, map makers would often draw mystery islands in the empty parts of the ocean, sometimes with sea monsters nearby to scare people off. Even as people explored more, some phantom islands stayed on the maps. Sailors would see something and report it as land, but the next ship couldn't find it. An island called High Brazil, west of Ireland, was on maps for hundreds of years, though no one ever set foot on it. These ghost islands show us how much we want to find wonder at the edge of what we know. Islands also feel like a place to escape. People who dreamed of a perfect, happy world often imagined it on an island. Thomas More, who wrote a famous book called Utopia, put his perfect town on an island. Being separate kept it safe from the problems of the world. The water was like a wall. But the same water that makes an island a paradise can also make it scary. People have imagined islands as dangerous places where monsters live. In the old Greek story of the Odyssey, the hero visits the island of the one-eyed giant and the island of the witch Circe and hears the deadly songs of the sirens. For old sailors, islands were both a safe place to stop and a possible trap. Even today, we love stories about islands. Treasure Island gave us the idea of buried pirate gold. Robinson Crusoe made us wonder how we would survive all alone. From secret labs and adventure stories to lost worlds in movies, islands are the perfect place for something amazing to happen. This pull might come from something deep inside us. On a big land, you can walk forever. But an island is a complete world you can see all at once. That can feel cozy. It's a place we can imagine all of, whether it's a paradise, a prison, or a magic land. The ocean around it keeps the story safe. It's strange how often these magical islands are about something we wish for. Atlantis is a lost, great world we wish we could find. Avalon is a place of rest we wish we could go to. Utopias are perfect worlds we wish we could build. So much of our love for islands is not about what's really there, but about what might be there. A dark spot on the horizon, a story told by a sailor, or an empty spot on a map is enough to start a dream. Islands, real or imagined, remind us that mystery is always close. They sit just out of sight, promising that just past the waves, there is always another island waiting to be found. To live on an island means you have to know your limits. There is only so much water, so much wood, and so much land. The sea keeps you safe, but it also keeps you separate. But all through time, people on islands have not just survived. They have built amazing cultures full of art, smart ideas, and strength. From the giant statues of Easter Island to the busy islands of the Philippines, island towns show us how people can thrive when they are surrounded by the sea. Easter Island. which its people call Rapa Nui, is a powerful story. It is one of the most faraway places on Earth, thousands of miles from any other land. Even though they were so alone, the Rapa Nui people made a famous kind of art, the moai. These are the giant stone statues with long, sad faces that stare across the island. Some of these statues weigh as much as 10 cars. They were carved from the island's volcano rock and then moved all across the land. We still aren't sure exactly how they did it, but we know it took great skill. Lots of people working together and a strong belief. Life on Rapa Nui was hard. The island is small, and there wasn't much food or wood. Over time, the people used up many of the trees, which made it harder to live. Old stories tell of hard times, but the culture was strong. The language, dances, and traditions are still alive today, and the moai still stand, reminding us how much people want to make something wonderful, even in the loneliest place on Earth. While Easter Island is about being alone, the Maldives show a different kind of life. This country is made of more than 1,000 tiny islands, like pearls scattered in the Indian Ocean. The Maldives are made of coral, and they are very low and flat. Fresh water is hard to find, and storms are a big worry. But for hundreds of years, the Maldivian people have done well by making the sea their best friend. Fishing has always been the center of life, especially tuna fish. The reefs gave them food and safety. The islands were also a stopping point for ships crossing the ocean. The Maldives became famous for cowrie shells, which were used as money in many parts of Asia and Africa. Think of that. Tiny shells from a tiny island were used to buy things far away. Maldivians became expert sailors. Today, rising seas are a big danger to these low islands, but their sea-loving culture is still strong. The Philippines are different again. With more than 7,000 islands, this is one of the biggest island groups in the world. This geography shaped its whole story. The islands were like stepping stones for people moving and trading across the sea. Skilled sailors from Asia settled the islands thousands of years ago, bringing farming and boat building. The sea connected the islands not just to each other, but to the whole world. Traders from China, India, and other lands came to swap goods and ideas. When explorers from Spain arrived, they found people who were already part in a big, busy network. The Spanish brought new beliefs and language, which mixed with the old ways. Today, the culture of the Philippines is a wonderful mix, full of colorful festivals and yummy food that shows how life can grow in a land of thousands of islands. In all these places, we see a pattern. Island people must always think about their limits. Food, wood, and water are precious. Knowing how to sail a boat isn't just fun. It's needed for survival. The sea is both a friend and an enemy. It gives food, but it also brings storms. What's amazing is that these limits often make culture grow stronger. Having little makes you creative. On Easter Island, they made giant art. In the Maldives, they became masters of the sea and trade. In the Philippines, the mix of so many islands made a culture that is strong and good at blending in. Telling stories is also very important. Old songs, dances, and spoken tales hold the memories of a people. On Easter Island, chants still tell parts of the old history. In the Philippines, long songs tell of heroes and sea journeys. These stories aren't just for fun. They are tools for survival, holding a community together. There is a kind of poetry in how islands change people. They take limits and turn them into a way of life. They make people look out at the sea, but also hold them close to their small piece of land. Islands show us that you don't have to be big to be important. A small town on a rock or a nation of 1,000 islands can leave a mark on the world just as big as a giant country. The Moai of Rapa Nui, the reefs of the Maldives, and the busy towns of the Philippines all prove that people can find a way to thrive, no matter what. There is a special kind of story about being cast away. The huge wide sea suddenly throws you onto a small piece of land. There are no houses, no towns, and no ships passing by. There is just you, the trees, the rocks, and the sound of the waves. For as long as people have sailed, there have been stories of shipwrecks, of people stuck far from home who have to learn to survive all alone. In these stories, islands are both a safe place and a prison. Being alone tests how smart and strong a person can be. The most famous story is about Alexander Selkirk, a Scottish sailor who was left alone on an island off the coast of Chile over 300 years ago. After a fight with his captain, Selkirk asked to be left on the shore. It seemed like a bad idea, but his old ship later sank, so he was lucky. Selkirk survived all by himself for more than 4 years. He lived on goats and fish until he was finally rescued. His amazing story gave the writer Daniel Defoe an idea for his famous book, Robinson Crusoe. Crusoe, with the tools he saved from his ship, becomes the classic castaway. He learns to build, farm, and survive, and he becomes a symbol of how people can make it on their own. But not all castaway stories have happy endings. Many sailors who shipwrecked on empty islands never got home. An island might give you coconuts, but it might not have any fresh water. Survival often depends on luck just as much as skill. Still, we love the idea of the castaway. It's the idea of starting over, with none of the comforts of home, forced to use only your own brain and hands. What would you do if you were suddenly cut off from everyone? Real life has amazing stories, too. In the Pacific Ocean, great Polynesian sailors sometimes got blown off course. A few were lucky and landed on an empty island. Using their skills, they could build new homes and new communities were started. For them, being cast away wasn't an end, but a new beginning. When European explorers came, their trips often mixed discovery with danger. A sudden storm could smash a ship on a coral reef. New sicknesses could spread. What started as an exciting trip could turn into a sad story. Think of the story of Yahao Pitcairn Island. This is where the sailors who mutinied or took over the ship HMS Bounty went to hide. They settled on Pitcairn, a tiny volcanic island that was in the wrong spot on the maps. This made it the perfect hiding place. For years they lived all alone, starting families. Their new life was hard and sometimes violent, but they survived. And today the families of those sailors still live on Pitcairn Island. Shipwreck stories are also where different worlds crash into each other. When stranded sailors met the people already living on an island, sometimes they were welcomed. Other times, they were met with fear and fighting. A single shipwreck could bring new tools, animals, or sicknesses to an island, changing it forever. Being stranded all alone also does strange things to your mind. Time stretches out. Days blur together. Many castaways wrote diaries or cut marks on wood to keep track of the days. This was a way to hold on to the world they lost. Others, like Robinson Crusoe, even invented imaginary friends to keep from being too lonely. In these stories, the island itself feels like a character. Some islands are kind, with fruit trees and fresh water. Others are cruel, just bare rocks. The island decides who survives. The same ocean that carries a ship to safety can also turn an island into a cage. But even with all the hardship, we still love these stories. They remind us of how strong people can be. Time after time, people facing giant problems have found a way to keep going. They build shelters, make tools, find food, and hold on to hope. Maybe we love castaway stories because they are about two things at once. An island is a place of being lost, but also a place of being reborn. To be stranded is to lose your whole world, but also to be given a new, smaller one. The castaway is both a victim and a hero. And so, the idea of being alone on an island stays with us, as magical as the horizon itself. Some islands are not lonely at all. Instead, they are busy places where the whole world seems to meet. Because they are separate, they become important. They are like natural stepping stones across the ocean, or like gates on a busy highway. In these places, ships from faraway lands meet, trade goods, and mix their cultures. Walking the streets of an island port is like walking through a history book. Singapore is the most amazing modern story. It's an island at the very tip of a long piece of land, and it guards the entrance to one of the busiest shipping paths on Earth. For hundreds of years, this has been the doorway between the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea. Long before it was a modern city, merchants from China, India, and Arabia met there. Spices, silk, and treasure flowed through its port, and ideas and beliefs traveled with them. Today, Singapore is a giant of a city, with huge ships lining up in its harbor. It shows how a small island can hold the keys to the whole world's trade. Zanzibar. An island off the coast of Africa tells a different story. It was called the Spice Island, and it was once the world's center for cloves. But Zanzibar was also a meeting place for Arab, African, Persian, and Indian people. Its capital, Stone Town, is a maze of narrow streets and beautiful carved doors that show this mix. For a long time, Zanzibar was a hub for spices, ivory, and sadly, for the slave trade. Today, its harbors are quieter, but you can still feel the history. You can smell the spices in the air and feel the stories in its walls. Malta, in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, has been a crossroads for thousands of years. It sits right between Europe and Africa. Because it was so important, empires always wanted to control it. The Romans, Arabs, and many others left their mark. The Knights of St. John turned Malta into a giant stone fortress. In World War II, it was a key spot that was fought over hard. Today, its harbors are full of boats, but the giant stone walls remind you of its past. Malta is an island that has always been at the center of things. The special thing about these islands is that they are both alone and connected. They are small, but they are also stopping points that ships must use. Ships need to rest, get new supplies, and trade. Over time, these stops became melting pots, where languages, foods, and ways of life all mix together. Imagine a sailor stepping onto a dock in Zanzibar long ago. He would smell cloves and cinnamon. He would hear people talking in Arabic, Swahili, and Indian languages. He might see Chinese plates, Indian cloth, and beads from Venice all in the same market. Islands like this became living museums of the world long before we had computers. The same is true in Singapore. Even today, its food shows this amazing mix: Chinese noodles, Indian curries, and Malay barbecue all on the same street. And in Malta, the language itself is a mix of Arabic, Italian, and English. A port doesn't just move boxes, it mixes people. What's interesting is how these islands' luck would change. When ships found new paths, some islands became quiet again. Others found new jobs. They remind us that geography is powerful and that even the smallest piece of land can be a stage for the world's history. These ports also catch our imagination. They are places where strangers meet and stories are swapped. They are noisy, busy places, but they are also full of possibility. A ship leaving the harbor could be going anywhere. In the end, these special islands show us that the sea doesn't just divide us, it also ties us together, pulling distant places closer through the steady rhythm of trade. Step onto an island, and you'll soon see that the rules of life can be different. Animals that seem normal in other places take on new shapes. Sometimes they change in ways so strange, they seem like they're from a storybook. When the sea cuts them off, plants and animals change to fit their new homes, showing us how creative life can be. Madagascar is maybe the most famous of these strange worlds. It broke off from Africa almost 90 million years ago, and life there went down its own path. Animals that are found nowhere else were able to live safe and sound. The most famous are the beaux lemurs. These are primates, like monkeys, but they are special to Madagascar. There are dozens of kinds, from the tiny mouse lemur that could fit in your hand, to the big indri, which sings spooky songs in the forest. Lemurs never had to fight with other, tougher animals, so they changed to fit every type of job. Some sleep all day and come out at night. Some leap through the trees. They are a sign of how life can blossom when it's left alone. Madagascar's plants are just as weird. Baobab trees, with their giant, fat trunks, look like they were planted upside down. They store water in their trunks to survive the dry weather. In other parts, spiny forests full of thorny, cactus-like plants grow. It all feels like you've walked into a different version of Earth. Travel across the world to New Zealand, Pui Biu, and you'll find another amazing group of characters. New Zealand had no land mammals except for bats, so birds took over their jobs. The most famous is the kiwi. It's a shy bird that sleeps all day, has fuzzy feathers, a long beak, and can't fly. Kiwis lay eggs that are so big for their body. It would be like a person giving birth to a 4-year-old. New Zealand also used to have the moa, a giant, flightless bird that was taller than a person. With no hunters, they were safe until humans arrived and hunted them all. And to hunt the moa, there was the Haast's eagle, the biggest eagle that ever lived. Imagine that. A giant bird hunted by an even bigger bird, all in a land with no lions or tigers. Islands often make these oddities because of two trends: gigantism, getting bigger, and dwarfism, getting smaller. With no predators, small animals like the Komodo dragon can get huge, but big animals like elephants might get tiny to survive on less food. Another strange thing is the loss of flight. Birds that live on safe islands often give up flying over time. Flying takes a lot of energy. If you don't need to escape, why bother? The mythic of Mauritius is the most famous example. It was a happy, flightless bird until sailors arrived. Today, New Zealand's kakapo, a big parrot that walks everywhere, is a rare survivor of this strange path. Island plants are just as quirky. In Hawaii, a group of plants called silver swords look like spiky, shimmering balls of silver. They grow on the harsh, dark lava and look like something from outer space. What makes these island worlds so magical is also what makes them so sad. The loneliness that protected them for millions of years also left them unable to defend themselves. When humans brought new animals like rats, cats, and goats, it was a disaster. Birds that never learned to be afraid were wiped out. Plants were eaten. This weakness shows us how delicate the balance of life is. But islands are also treasures for science. The Galapagos Islands gave Darwin his big idea. Madagascar's forests are still full of animals scientists have never seen. Even today, we are still finding new life hidden on these lonely specks of land. When we see these creatures, we feel a sense of wonder. The lemurs with their bright eyes, or the kiwi shuffling in the dark, feel like visitors from another time. Islands remind us that life doesn't just follow one set of rules. It tries new things, it plays, and it sometimes makes things that are beyond our wildest dreams. They are nature's most imaginative experiments. An island can look like paradise, a green forest, bird songs, and colorful reefs. But under all that beauty, there is a secret. Islands are weak. They are like special gardens that grow only when everything is just right. If one thing changes, if a new animal arrives or the weather shifts, the whole garden can fall apart with scary speed. One reason is that islands are small. On a big land, if one part has a problem, animals can move. On an island, there is nowhere to go. If a kind of bird lives on only one island, its whole future depends on that one small spot. This is why islands have so many unique creatures, but also why so many have disappeared forever. History is full of sad stories about this. The most famous is the dodo, the flightless bird from Mauritius. It had no enemies on its island, so it never learned to be afraid. When sailors landed, they found the birds were easy to catch. The rats and pigs that came off the ships ate the dodo's eggs. In just a few decades, the dodo was gone forever. Its story is now a symbol of how fast island life can be broken. But the dodo wasn't the last one. All over the Pacific, new animals brought by people changed everything. Rats that hid on ships ate the eggs and seeds of plants, and birds that had no defenses. Cats, brought as pets, became deadly hunters. Goats, brought for food, ate all the plants, leaving bare rock behind. It's not just animals. New plants can also be invaders. If a new plant grows faster than the native ones, it can cover everything, smothering the local plants and changing the whole forest. People themselves put a lot of pressure on islands. Fresh water is often hard to find, the dirt is thin, and there isn't much room to farm. On Easter Island, cutting down all the trees long ago led to hunger and hard times. Today, having lots of people on an island makes these problems even bigger. Tourism, which brings in money, can also be a problem. It uses up precious water and can hurt the reefs. Now, climate change is the biggest danger. Low-lying atoll islands, like in the Maldives or Tuvalu, are in danger of being covered by the rising sea. Salt water is getting into their drinking wells and killing their gardens. Stronger storms are crashing into their homes. For some, the idea of having to leave their homeland forever is a very real fear. But this is not just a sad story. Islands are also places of great strength and new ideas. People are fighting to save their homes. In some places, scientists have worked hard to get rid of the invading rats or goats. Once they are gone, the native birds and plants can come back. It's amazing to see. In other places, people are planting new forests. In New Zealand, they have made safe islands with no predators, where rare birds like the kakapo can live without fear. These stories show that even if these gardens are weak, they can be healed with care. Islands teach us to be humble. The very things that make them beautiful, their small size and loneliness, are what make them need our protection. They show us, in a small, clear way, what the whole planet is facing. We all live on a bigger island, Earth, with only so much water and land. If we can learn to take care of these small worlds, maybe we can learn to take care of our big one, too. Close your eyes and picture a tropical island. What do you see? You probably see palm trees, swaying, soft sand, and bright blue water. Maybe there's a hammock strung between two trees. Time itself feels like it has slowed down. This dream is deep in our minds. It's the picture of paradise. But where did this dream come from? And what is it really like to live there? The palm tree is the biggest star of this dream. But coconut palms are more than just pretty. For island people, they are the tree of life. You can eat the coconut meat, drink the water, use the husk to make rope, and use the shells for bowls. For visitors, palms mean rest. For islanders, they mean survival. Coconuts themselves are amazing travelers. They can float on the ocean for months and still grow when they wash up on a beach. This is how they spread all over the world. And the hammock? That's another part of the dream. But hammocks weren't invented for vacations. Long ago, people in the Caribbean wove them to sleep in. Being off the ground kept them safe from snakes, bugs, and wet dirt. Sailors later used them on ships to save space. Only later did the hammock become a symbol of pure relaxation. Behind this dreamy picture, real life on a tropical island is not always easy. Fresh water can be hard to find, storms can be very strong, and the hot sun can be tough. Mosquitoes can be a pain, and being far away from big land can make it hard to get medicine or other goods. For people living on low coral atolls, life is a constant challenge, always watching the sea. Even the beautiful beaches are not always there. Sand is just tiny bits of rock and coral, ground up by waves over a long time. Some beaches wash away in the winter storms and come back in the summer. The bright blue water might be hiding coral reefs that are sick from the water getting too warm. Tourism, which brings in money, is also tricky. It gives people jobs, but it can also hurt the very nature that the tourists came to see. It can use up too much water and change the local culture. The paradise that visitors dream of is often held up by the hard work of the people who live there. And yet the dream stays. We all have a deep wish to get away. An island feels like a place where the rules of the world stop, and the sea draws a magic circle around you. Writers and artists helped build this dream. Explorers told stories of islands where fruit was easy to pick and the air was sweet. Movies and ads made the palm tree beach the perfect escape. But the islands themselves helped too. It is hard to stand on a quiet beach at sunset, with the sky glowing orange, and not feel like you're in paradise. The warm air, the sound of the waves, and the bright colors are magical. Of course, paradise means different things to different people. For a tourist, it's a hammock. For a diver, it's the fish. For an islander, paradise might just be a safe storm season and healthy children. Maybe the real magic of tropical islands is this mix of dream and real life. They are both beautiful and hard. They are both a paradise and a challenge. The palm trees and hammocks are real, but so are the storms and the hard work. The tropical island dream is powerful, and it will probably be with us forever, promising that somewhere out there, life is simpler, slower, and sweeter. Not all islands have palm trees. Some rise up from the sea, looking empty and harsh. Their land is scraped clean by wind, ice, or fire. These are the tough islands, where just being alive is amazing. They remind us that islands are not always a paradise. Sometimes they are a test. Look at Surtsey, a volcanic island that burst out of the ocean near Iceland in 1963. At first, it was just smoking black rock. It looked like a place where nothing could ever live. But soon, seabirds started to visit. Seeds carried by the wind and waves got stuck in the cracks. Over the years, moss, flowers, and bugs showed up. Surtsey became a real-life experiment, showing how fast life can grab onto a new, empty place. Compare that to the freezing Arctic islands like Svalbard. This place is deep in the Arctic Circle, dark for months in the winter, and colder than a freezer. But even here, life holds on. Polar bears walk on the ice, millions of seabirds nest on the high cliffs, and tough little plants grow in the short summer. The few people who live there survive only because of modern help. Other islands are harsh because they are just dry and rocky. Ascension Island in the Atlantic was once an empty, dry place. Long ago, scientists, including Charles Darwin, had an idea. They tried to build a forest there, planting trees from all over the world. Over time, it actually worked. The trees helped trap moisture and make it greener. It's a strange man-made forest on a once empty rock. In the South Atlantic is Tristan da Cunha, often called the most remote, far-away inhabited island on Earth. It's a volcano surrounded by thousands of miles of ocean. The few hundred people who live there have a very close community. They fish and farm, but the supply ship might not come for months. If the weather is bad, no boats can get to them. For them, survival is about being strong against being so alone. The Aleutian Islands, a chain of islands stretching from Alaska, are another kind of harsh. Here, cold seas and active volcanoes meet. It's a land of fog, storms, and earthquakes. Sailors have always been afraid of this place. But for the native Aleut people, these islands were home. They learned to read the weather and the sea, and their whole culture was built on surviving in this tough, misty world. Sometimes, harsh islands are just too small or dry. Clipperton Island in the Pacific is a coral ring with almost no fresh water. People tried to live there once to mine for bird droppings, called guano, but the supply ships stopped coming. It became a terrible story of sickness and sadness. Today, it's empty. A reminder that not every island wants visitors. But even in these tough places, life is amazing. Millions of penguins crowd the rocky shores of cold southern islands. Albatross birds fly for thousands of miles just to return to a tiny, empty speck of land to build their nests. Because these islands are so hard for people to live on, they often become the perfect, safe home for wildlife. People, however, are still drawn to these difficult places. They are symbols of being tough. Scientists build stations in places like South Georgia to study glaciers and penguins. These outposts show that humans will try to go to even the most unwelcoming edges of the map. There is also a kind of stern, cold beauty in these islands. The sight of black cliffs against a gray sea, or icebergs floating by a lonely shore, has its own kind of magic. To visit a place like this is to feel very small. In the end, harsh islands teach us about being strong. Life finds a way. It might be moss on new lava, or seabirds on a windy cliff, or a small town holding on in the middle of nowhere. These islands may not be your dream vacation, but they hold their own powerful stories of survival. Some islands are not about coconuts. They are about power. A small rock in the middle of the ocean might look like just a spot for birds, but to a country, it might be a very important piece of a puzzle. It could be a place for a military base, or a way to claim all the water and fish around it. Islands may be small, but in the world of countries and governments, they can be a very big deal. A big example is in the South China Sea. Here, groups of tiny reefs and islands are claimed by many different countries all at once. Why do they all want these tiny spots of sand? Because of a rule that says if you own an island, you also get to control the sea for 200 miles around it. And that means you get the fish, the shipping paths, and any oil that might be under the water. To make their claims stronger, some countries have even built new artificial islands on top of the reefs, complete with airports and buildings. Further north, Japan and Russia have argued for a long time over the Kuril Islands. At the end of World War II, Russia took over 4 islands that Japan says are theirs. Because they still argue about it, the two countries have never signed an official peace treaty to end the war. For the people who used to live there, this isn't just politics. It's about their homes. Islands are also used as strategic spots, like bases in a giant game. Great Britain's control of Gibraltar, at the mouth of the Mediterranean Sea, works like a fortress. In the Pacific, Guam and Hawaii became key American bases, perfectly placed to watch over the ocean. In World War II, giant battles were fought over tiny islands like Midway and Iwo Jima. Owning an island meant you owned the airport and the gas station for ships. Some islands are symbols of pride. The Puis, Falkland Islands. Alma in the South Atlantic are claimed by both Britain and Argentina. This argument led to a war in 1982. It shows how much countries are willing to fight, even for small, faraway islands. And then some islands are just dots on a map that countries want. Rockall is a single, lonely spike of granite rock in the North Atlantic. You can't live on it. It's always being hit by storms, but several countries are interested in it because of the fishing and oil rights it might give them. It's strange to think that the fate of the sea depends on who owns a single empty rock. Islands can also be places of difficult peace. The island of Cyprus has been divided between Greek and Turkish people for many years. It's a place where the world tries to help two sides find a way to live together, showing how one island can be a picture of a much bigger problem. Now, islands are at the center of a new problem: rising seas. Low-lying nations like Tuvalu are afraid their islands will disappear under the water. They ask a scary question. If your land is gone, are you still a country? Can a nation just be a group of people with no land? All of this shows that an island is never just an island. It is a foothold, a prize, a symbol, or a base. A tiny speck of rock can seem unimportant, but in the history of nations, it can change everything. So the next time you see a tiny dot on a globe, remember that dot might be shaping the world. Islands may be surrounded by water, but that doesn't stop culture from mixing. In fact, many islands are melting pots, where languages, foods, and traditions from all over the world have blended together to make something brand new. The sea doesn't just keep people out, it also brings them in. One of the best examples of this is Creole culture. Creole is a word that means something new, born from a mix. It often describes cultures that grew in places like the Caribbean or islands in the Indian Ocean, where people from Europe, Africa, and Asia all met. New languages were born. They started with words from French, Spanish, or English, but mixed them with the grammar and rhythms of African or local languages. These Creole languages are a living record of history. Today, they are spoken with pride in songs, poems, and everyday life. Food tells the story just as clearly. In the Caribbean, the food is a mix of African, Indian, European, and native tastes. Jerk, seasoning from Jamaica, has roots in Africa. Doubles, a street food from Trinidad, was brought by workers from India. On the island of Mauritius, you can find Chinese noodles, Indian curries, and French pastries all on the same table. An island meal is like a conversation between different parts of the world. Music is another way island cultures shine. In Jamaica, reggae music took African rhythms and mixed them with new instruments, and that island sound spread all over the world. In Trinidad, people invented the steel pan, turning old oil drums into instruments that can play beautiful, complex songs. On islands in the Indian Ocean, Sega music mixes African drumming with European tunes. This music carries the sound of the ocean, but its heart is a blend of every land that touched its shore. Storytelling also gets mixed. In the Caribbean, Anansi the Spider, a clever trickster character from West African stories, became a star of island fairy tales. He was a piece of home, carried across the ocean. This mixing often happened because it had to. On a small island, people have to work together and trade. When new people arrived, as explorers, traders, or sadly, as slaves, their traditions didn't stay separate. They wove together. A festival might mix a Catholic saint's day with African drumming. This history was not always happy. Much of this mixing happened because of the pain of slavery and hard times. But even in those dark times, people's strength and creativity turned this crash of cultures into a new culture. Out of sadness came new kinds of strength and art. Today, these mixed cultures are strong and beautiful. Carnival in the Caribbean is a giant party that shows this mix with amazing costumes, loud music, and parades that are a blend of European, African, and local ideas. The sea itself helped all this mixing. It was a highway. Sailors and traders brought songs, recipes, and words with them. An island harbor might see ships from 4 different continents, and each ship left a little something behind. Over time, all those little bits created a rich new way of life. Islands teach us a great lesson. They show us that a culture's strength isn't about being pure. It's about being able to adapt and grow. By welcoming new ideas, island cultures became some of the most exciting in the world. They show us that new, beautiful things are born when different worlds meet. The very things that make islands so magical, their small size, their lonely place in the sea, also make them very weak. For hundreds of years, island people have lived in a careful balance with their world. But today, that balance is in danger. Rising seas, a changing climate, and the crowds of modern tourism are changing the future of islands. One of the biggest, scariest threats is the rising ocean. Low, flat islands, called atolls in the Pacific and Indian Oceans, are only a few feet above sea level. For countries like Tuvalu, Kiribati, and the Maldives, a few feet of sea level rise could mean their homes vanish under the water forever. Already, salt water from the sea is leaking into their gardens and their drinking water. Storms are stronger and wash away houses that used to be safe. For some people, moving away from their homeland is no longer a question of if, but when. Tourism, which brings in so much money, is also a hard puzzle. The beautiful beaches and reefs that tourists come to see are the very things that are most at risk. Big hotels need a lot of fresh water, which is hard to find on an island. The coral reefs, already stressed by warm water, can be damaged by boat anchors or even the sunscreen that washes off swimmers. It's a strange problem. The thing that pays the bills can also destroy the home. Climate change makes everything harder. Weird weather means some islands get too little rain, while others get terrible floods. Warmer oceans are changing where the fish live, which is a big problem for people who depend on fishing. And hurricanes are getting stronger, tearing apart towns and homes. For a small island, cleaning up after a giant storm can take many, many years. But the dangers aren't just to the land, they are also to the culture. Island traditions are tied to the land. A special beach, a fishing spot, a graveyard on the coast, these places hold the stories of a people. When the sea washes them away, it's not just land that is lost, but a piece of their hearts and their history. But this is not just a story of sadness. All over the world, island people are fighting back with smart ideas and amazing strength. In the Maldives, they are designing floating buildings. In the Caribbean, they are planting mangrove trees along the coast to act as a natural wall against storms. These island nations have also become powerful voices. In world meetings, leaders from tiny Pacific islands speak with great power. They remind the big countries that the people who did the least to cause climate change are the ones who are hurting the most. It's strange, but islands, which we always thought of as faraway places to escape, have become the canary in the coal mine for the whole planet. What is happening to them today is a warning for what will happen to coastal cities everywhere tomorrow. Even with these big fears, islands are still magical. And the people who live there are still deeply connected to their homes. The future for islands is not certain, but it's not without hope. Island people have always been good at adapting. The question is whether they can adapt fast enough this time. When you picture that beach with the palm trees, also picture the sea walls, the mangrove roots, and the people working hard to protect their home. Paradise is more complicated than it looks, but in that mix of weakness and strength, islands tell the most powerful story of all. There is something wonderful about the idea of an island as a quiet place, a retreat where the noise of the world just fades away. For hundreds of years, islands have called to poets, painters, and dreamers. They offer a place to be alone and think clearly. To stand on a piece of land with water all around you is to feel a natural border, a quiet sign that life can be simple. Writers have always loved this feeling. The poet Lord Byron went to the Greek islands for inspiration. Robert Louis Stevenson, who wrote Treasure Island, chose to spend the end of in life in Samoa, loving the slow, quiet island rhythm. For them, the sea wasn't a wall. It was a frame that gave them space to create. Painters, too, felt the pull. Paul Gauguin's famous paintings of Tahiti are full of the bright, strong light and color he found there. It was the total opposite of the gray, busy cities he left behind. But it's not just famous artists. We all feel this pull. Being on an island makes time feel different. The days feel longer. You can walk from one side to the other and feel like you've crossed a whole world. Being alone on an island isn't lonely. It's just a quiet space to breathe. The water all around you has a powerful effect on the mind. It's a moat that keeps the busy world away. This is why, long ago, monks built their quiet homes on islands, like Iona in Scotland. The loneliness helped them think and pray. For some, an island means freedom. It's a place where you can be yourself, away from what everyone else expects. Dreamers have often imagined their perfect worlds, their utopias, on islands where the water keeps bad ideas out. Of course, being alone on a real island's hard work. But in our daydreams, the island is always perfect. The waves are gentle, and there are no worries. The dream is not just about escaping other people, but about connecting with nature. The sound of the waves, the cry of a bird, the wide open sky. It makes you feel small, but also part of something big and peaceful. The sound of an island is special. There is no traffic, just the sound of the wind and the waves. Many people feel this sound can heal the mind. In the end, the call of the island is not about being alone forever. It's about the promise of finding peace. It's about stepping away from the noise long enough to hear yourself think again. For writers, artists, and dreamers, that promise has always been magic. To answer the call of an island is to listen to the sea whisper, Slow down, breathe, let the world wait. An island by itself is one thing, but when you have a whole chain of islands, a group of them scattered like stars, that's an archipelago. These island chains have their own special feeling. They are like beads on a necklace, floating on the sea. Each one is different, but they are all connected by the same water and the same history. From the thousands of islands in Indonesia to the sunny islands of the Caribbean, archipelagos show us how many different things can still be part of one family. Indonesia is the biggest archipelago on Earth with more than 17,000 islands. It's like a giant bridge of islands connecting Asia and Australia. It has huge islands like Java and tiny specks of land. Because it's on the Ring of Fire, it has many volcanoes, which makes the soil very good for farming. The number of different cultures, languages, and animals is amazing. But even with all these differences, the sea ties them all together. The Philippines is another giant group, with over 7,000 islands. It is also on the Ring of Fire. The sea that separates the islands is also the highway that connects them, making it a natural place for trading and for cultures to mix. In the Aegean Sea, the islands of Greece are scattered in groups. Long ago, Greek sailors sailed between these islands, sharing ideas, goods, and the great myths of gods and heroes. Each island is special, with its white villages and old ruins, but they all feel part of one family. The Caribbean is a long, curved chain of islands. Some were made by volcanoes, others by coral. This chain became a meeting place for people from all over the world. Native people, European explorers, enslaved Africans, and workers from Asia. The result is a place famous for its blended music, food, and languages. Even though each island is different, they all share a special Caribbean feeling. What's so interesting about archipelagos is how the sea does two jobs at once. The water separates each island, letting it have its own special animals and traditions, but the sea also links them. It's a highway, not a wall. Nature loves this too. In the Galapagos Islands, animals spread from one island to the next, but then changed a little bit on each one. That's how you get different finches and different tortoises, all close together, but each one unique. People who live in archipelagos often feel this too. They feel very proud of their own island, but they also feel part of the bigger chain of islands. From a map, you can see the beautiful patterns they make. Some make a curve like a bow. Others are in messy, beautiful clusters. These patterns show us how the Earth was made, by volcanoes, by coral, or by ice. Maybe what we love about archipelagos is that they are two things at once. They are many, and they are one. They are scattered but connected. They remind us that we can be different, but still belong together. Some islands are ghosts. They disappear almost as fast as they show up. A pile of sand might get pushed up by a storm and then wash away a week later. Sailors have even put islands on maps that were never really there at all. These are the invisible islands, the ones made of shifting sand or just imagination. Sandbanks are the most common now you see them, now you don't islands. The currents in the ocean are always moving sand around. Long ago, sailors were terrified of them because a hidden sandbank could wreck a ship. Dogger Bank, Sierk in the North Sea, is a huge, shallow area that is famous for fishing. But thousands of years ago, during the last ice age, it wasn't underwater at all. It was a big, grassy land where people and animals lived. When the ice melted, the sea rose and covered it. Doggerland is a drowned world, an invisible island that reminds us that the maps are always changing. Then there are phantom islands. These are islands that sailors said they saw, and that got drawn on maps for hundreds of years but weren't real. One was called High Brazil, an island that was supposed to be west of Ireland. Old maps showed it as a round island hidden in the mist that you could only see once every 7 years. No one ever found it, but it stayed on maps for a long time. Another was the Island of St. Brendan. An old story said an Irish monk sailed across the ocean and found a beautiful, perfect island. People looked for it for centuries. These ghost islands were not real, but they show how much people wanted to believe that there was still magic hidden in the empty parts of the ocean. Why were there so many of these? Before we had satellites, sailors had to guess. A cloud on the horizon, a giant iceberg, or even a mirage, a trick of the light, could look like land. Once one sailor reported it, it got drawn on a map. Then other mapmakers would copy it. It was like a rumor that lasted for 100 years. We love these invisible islands because they blur the line between what is real and what is a dream. They are reminders that the Earth is always changing. New volcanic islands are born, and old islands wear away. The map is never truly finished. Maybe the most interesting islands are the ones that are not there at all, but that still float in our minds like ghosts on the water. When scientists want to understand how life works, they go to islands. Islands are like nature's tiny labs. Because they are small and all alone, it's easier to see how animals and plants change, survive, or sometimes disappear. From Charles Darwin to scientists today, islands have given us the answers to life's biggest questions. The Galapagos Islands are the most famous science lab. When Darwin visited in 1835, he saw those finches. He noticed that on each island, the birds' beaks were different, perfectly shaped for the food on that one island. This small clue helped him build his giant theory of evolution. The finches showed him how life adapts. Other islands show this too. In Hawaii, a family of birds called honey creepers changed into dozens of different, colorful birds. Some have long, curved beaks for sipping nectar from flowers. Others have thick, strong beaks for cracking seeds. It's like Darwin's finches, but even more colorful. Islands also teach us about the island rule, gigantism, and eudorphism. We saw how animals like tortoises get huge while animals like elephants get tiny. Islands are like a funhouse mirror for evolution, showing us how flexible life can be. Sadly, islands also teach us about extinction. Because the animals there are so unique, they are easily hurt. The story of the dodo taught us how quickly humans can destroy a species that took millions of years to make. Today, scientists go to islands to save animals. In New Zealand, they have created safe islands where they remove all the predators. On these islands, rare birds like the kakapo and kiwi can live safely. Islands show us sad stories, but they also show us how we can heal nature. A long time ago, two scientists, Robert MacArthur and E.O. Wilson, came up with the theory of island biogeography. It's a set of rules that explains why big islands have more animals than the small islands, and why islands close to the mainland have more animals than islands far away. This idea, which they got from studying islands, now helps us protect nature everywhere. We use it to build national parks, which are like islands of forest in a sea of cities and farms. Even the rocks of islands are teachers. The Hawaiian Islands, which are a chain of volcanoes, show scientists a timeline of how the Earth's plates are moving. In a way, every island is a teacher. The Galapagos taught us how life changes. Mauritius taught us about loss, and the islands of New Zealand are teaching us about hope and healing. They are small places that hold giant lessons. Today, more than 600 million people live on islands. That's almost 1 out of every 12 people on Earth. For some, island life means living in a giant city with skyscrapers and subways. For others, it means living in a small village by the sea, where old traditions are still strong. Think of Kash, Singapore. It's an island that is also one of the busiest, most modern cities in the world. It's full of tall glass buildings and flashing lights. But it's also full of markets with foods that tell the story of its multicultural past. Because land is so precious, they build up, with gardens on the roofs of buildings. Here, island life is about being smart and modern. Now think of the Faroe Islands. Way up in the cold North Atlantic, only about 50,000 people live there. It's a land of steep green cliffs, rain, and sheep. Life here is all about the sea, and fishing is the most important job. They hold on to their old traditions. It's a quiet life, focused on balancing the past with the modern world. In the Pacific, islands like Fiji, or Samoa show another way. Here, family and community are the most important things. Even as tourists visit and the internet arrives, the old ways of life are strong. They have a joke about the coconut wireless, which is how fast news travels in a small island town. It's a reminder that even in our busy world, local life can stay at the heart of everything. Japan is a nation of big islands, home to over 100 million people. On the main island, Tokyo is a giant, fast-paced city. But on the southern island of Okinawa, life is slower. Okinawa is famous for being a blue zone, a place where many people live to be 100 years old. Their island food and quiet way of life show how old traditions can keep people healthy. What connects all these places is that island life makes everything feel stronger. The good things and the bad things. Space is limited. People live close together. But at the same time, islands are like beacons, protecting old traditions that might fade away in other places. Island life today is about finding a balance. In Singapore, it's a balance between being crowded and having a good life. In the Faroe Islands, it's a balance between old traditions and new technology. In the Caribbean, it's a balance between the money from tourism and protecting their beautiful home. Islanders have always had to be smart to survive. That spirit is still alive today, as they mix new tools with old wisdom. When we think of islands now, we shouldn't just see beaches. We should see busy harbors, dancing villagers, gardens on rooftops, and kids walking by the sea. These are the real islands, where the past and the present are learning to live together. An island is never just a piece of land. It is also a symbol. It's a picture that floats in our minds, a metaphor. When we talk about islands, we are often talking about feelings, being alone, dreaming, or feeling safe. The main feeling is solitude, or being alone. To be on an island is to be cut off, with a clear border between you and the world. The poet John Donne once said, "No man is an island," meaning that we all need each other, but the fact that he used that picture shows how much we think of islands as a symbol for being an individual. Writers love islands of the imagination. Utopia was a perfect island cut off from all problems. Robinson Crusoe was an island of survival. Neverland. In Peter Pan is a magic island. In these stories, islands are not just places. They are dream worlds, containers for our hopes and fears. In our minds, islands feel safe because they have edges. In a world that feels too big, an island is a small, cozy place. This is why we dream of getting away to an island. The metaphor promises us rest, but the image works both ways. The sea that cuts us off is also the sea that connects us. Our minds are like islands, but our words, our art, and our songs are like boats that travel between us, carrying feelings. We even use it in our words every day. We talk about an island of calm in a busy day. We talk about an island of stability in a stormy time. The word works because it perfectly captures that feeling of being safe, separate, and clear. But the dream can also be a nightmare. An island can be a prison. To feel islanded can mean to feel lonely, abandoned, or trapped. The sea that protects you can also be the wall that keeps you in. Maybe this is why the idea of an island is so powerful. It means two opposite things at once: freedom and limits, safety and danger, being alone and being connected. To dream of an island is to dream of escape, but also of being held safe. It's about finding out who you are, but also about connecting to the world. In the end, the most powerful islands may not be the ones in the sea, but the ones in our minds, the small worlds we dream about to help us understand ourselves. Every island begins and ends with the sea. No matter how tall its cliffs or how busy its towns, an island is always held by the water. The ocean is the stage, the partner, and the lifeblood. To talk about islands, we must always come back to the sea. The sea is a puzzle. It separates, wrapping islands in quiet, but it also connects, carrying ships, fish, and stories. And for thousands of years, the tides have been the heartbeat of island life. Fishermen watch them. Sailors use them. The ocean is the great, steady rhythm of the world. The sea is a builder and a destroyer. Waves carve cliffs into beautiful shapes. Storms build beaches and then wash them away. Coral reefs grow under the water, acting like shields to protect the land. The island is not just sitting in the ocean, it is part of a living dance with the ocean. The sea also reminds us that nothing lasts forever. Islands rise up from volcanoes and they wear down till they are gone. The shoreline you see today is just a picture, a moment in time. The sea is patient, and in the end, it claims everything back. For people, the ocean has always been a gift and a danger. It gives food. It makes a highway for trade. But it also brings storms and loneliness. Island cultures honor the ocean. They know it is powerful. They see it as a god, a mother, or a spirit. Even today, when we have satellites and big engines, the ocean is still a mystery. Huge parts of it have never been seen by humans. For island nations, this mystery is their greatest treasure. A tiny island nation like Kiribati may be small on land, but it controls a piece of the ocean that is bigger than the country of India. The island is the tiny key that unlocks a giant, watery kingdom. The sea floods island culture. It shapes the food from fish to salt. It shapes the language with dozens of words for the wind and waves. It shapes the music with songs that sound like the surf. There is also a magic pull. The endless line of the horizon makes us dream. The sound of the waves makes us calm. To stand on an island is to feel the sea all around you, and it is a powerful, peaceful feeling. The sea also makes us feel small. Empires rise and fall, but the waves keep rolling. The ocean reminds us that we are not in charge. For islands, this is a daily lesson. Every storm is a reminder to be humble. Every calm day is a reminder to be thankful. And yet islands are never truly alone, because the sea ties them all together. The water that touches a beach in the Caribbean is the same water that touches a beach in Japan. There is really only one great, big ocean. Every island is just floating in it like a thread in a giant blue blanket. In the end, the sea, makes the island. Its beauty, its weakness, and its specialness all come from being held in that restless, watery circle. To think of an island without the sea is like thinking of a star without the night sky. The waves define them, connect them, and cradle them all. As our journey among islands comes to an end, let's think about what we have seen. These scattered pieces of land have been sanctuaries and prisons, labs for new life and busy meeting places. But in every story, they show us big truths. They shrink the big ideas of our world into a size we can understand. To think of islands is to think of strength. We have seen again and again how life learns to live with limits. A lemur in Madagascar, a kiwi in New Zealand, or a town farming on thin, rocky soil, they all show us how to keep going. Islands also teach us about creativity. When there isn't much to work with, imagination takes over. New languages are born from a mix of old ones. New music is made from old oil drums. New foods are cooked by blending tastes from all over the world. Creativity loves limits. We also learn about the delicate balance of nature. Islands are fragile gardens. They show us how everything is connected and how one small change can break everything. But they also show us how quickly life can heal if we just give it a chance. And always, there is the sea. The ocean is the great companion. It is the frame and the heartbeat. It gives food, it carries stories, and it demands respect. To live on an island is to know the rhythm of the water. For the rest of us, the sea reminds us that no place is truly alone. Islands feel so special because they are like us. Each of us is like an island with our own thoughts and feelings. But we are also connected to everyone else by the sea of being human. The idea of an island stays with us because it shows us both sides of life. The quiet of being alone and the joy of belonging to the world. In a time when our planet feels so big and yet so fragile, islands give us a clear view. They show us what it means to live with limits. They warn us about what we can lose, but they also give us peace. To sit on a beach and listen to the waves is to feel time slow down. The wide open sky, the sound of the wind, the glow of a sunset on the water, these are the things that calm the mind. Islands show us that the smallest places can hold the biggest feelings of peace. As you picture the islands we have visited in our dreams, let your mind float on the sound of the waves. Imagine standing on a cliff where the sea stretches out forever. Know that the land under your feet is both weak and strong, a temporary gift. Every island is a world, but together they make up our world. And just as the sea gathers them all into one ocean, their lessons gather into one truth, that to live well, we must live with care, with respect, and with thanks for all the beauty. So let's end where we began, surrounded by the ocean, listening to the never-ending rhythm of the tides. Let that calm stay with you, like the sound of the sea in your mind. A quiet reminder that the world is huge, fragile, and wonderful, and that in it, every island is both a place apart and a part of everything.